Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City. The Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene Dreyfus and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Hey. So performance of the night went to Cain Velasquez's knee, right?
Lack of performance of the night.
Yeah, he took out Cain Velasquez, though. I mean, the knee just taking him down. He's trained really hard.
I think the knee got fight of the night bonus.
He did. He walked away at $50,000. Congratulations to Cain Velasquez's knee. Poor guy.
Terrible.
Welcome.
I'm so sad, to see the end of a real promising and, of course, champion. He was a champion, but a person who could have made himself into the Hall of Fame. Cain had tremendous skills, heart, work ethic. But, sometimes we talk about fighters, how they can be very self-destructive. And in Cain's career, he worked too hard and he worked too unscientifically, especially when it came to weight training, and destroyed his body and destroyed his ability to compete. And it's just really sad, really sad. I was always a Cain Velasquez fan. I mean, he had problems with technique, and I think he made sometimes technical decisions that were not always the best, but got to respect the guy. And it's really sad to see him go, especially, because the weight class is not that competitive to begin with. It doesn't have so many great guys.
Now, do you think this is we're seeing him go, or is this just another, is he going to get another fight? I feel like they should give him one more fight and have it be like an easy win, so he can go out on a win.
Yeah,
have him fight against like a new person or something.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a gatekeeper, but when your knee goes that badly, and the thing is, so the fight for the listeners we're talking about is Ngannou and Velasquez, and it was last night, and I was really looking forward to Cain Velasquez trying to shoot on him, and he came out very, very herky-jerky. So I think even before the injury, it was injured. It was 100%. He came out very herky-jerky and weird, pressed him in a way that was not tactical. And I think this happened to me a couple times in my career. It's like when you're not confident in your body, you're not in the zone, and you do stupid stuff. You just do stupid because you're like, whoa, I'm injured. Crap, panic. Whoa. And even if it's unconscious, he came out very undisciplined. His hands were very undisciplined, threw kind of a weird kick that really looked not well thrown, not well placed. And he started trying to engage the distance, and then he just got shellacked. And his knee gave out. He took punches, but before his knee gave out, he just took punches. And then his knee gave out, and his knee gave out so badly. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It was just looked like he'd never trained in his life almost. And that's sad to say, as someone I respect so much, to look so poor. And his knee's given out before. I mean, was a fight on Fox many years ago. His knee gave out and he lost the fight.
Was his knee, you think, injured and he just pushed through and he said, well, I'll make it through the fight? And he's saying he was 100%, but he does an injury like that sneak up on you that quick? Or did he already know that there was a potential?
I don't know the answer to that question. And that's a really good question. I would say, and this goes for every fight out there, because when we talk about these fights, and I want my listeners to listen to this, I don't want it to just be, hey, this is what happened in the fight. Let's learn something from this. Let's make sure that we can see the mistakes of other people or the successes of other people and apply them to our own game. And I think this is particularly true of guys who've been in the game a long time, myself included, whether it's Muay Thai, whether it's wrestling, especially wrestling, whether it's jiu-jitsu, you develop these everyday pains that don't stop, and you just turn that pain off, and you just that becomes the norm. That becomes the norm. Mm-hmm. So I went to the doctor recently to get some checkup, and he's like, "Do you feel any pain?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? You can't ask me that question because I turn pain off in my brain. That's what it means to be a fighter." So sometimes it's really important to try to listen to your body, but also get objective results. Like, go to the physician. Hey, I'm having this, or physical therapist. I'm so glad that we have Dr. Steve Sundaraj. He was on the podcast. He's at our academy. And so I always have him look at something. What do you think about this? This feels off. If there's some of my students don't complain about injuries, but they don't move right. They're not moving right. So I'm like, go see Steve. And look, lo and behold, there's an injury. And they didn't know it themselves, but I can see as an outsider, they're not moving correctly. So I think with Cain, what you felt is the guy's like, I'm 100%, yeah, because he's so mentally strong that he is denying the pain that he just lives with a certain level of pain that never goes away. And you push through and you're trying to be a warrior. And there's always balance in life is important. Obviously, we're striving to be best versions of ourselves, which includes a certain level of toughness and grit and ability to withstand pain. And that's really important. But at the same time, you have to have the yin and the yang. You have to go to the other side and say, wait a minute. I also need to take care of my body and understand that this vessel is the thing that's going to take me through my life. And I don't want to wind up like Dan Gable. Do you know what Dan Gable is?
No.
He's one of the most successful wrestlers that America's ever produced. He went almost undefeated his high school college career. He's just amazing icon.
I thought the most successful wrestler was Nathan Hunter.
Your brother-in-law.
Shout out to Nathan. Sorry.
Hey, yeah, no, shout out to Nathan, who's awesome. I hope he's listening.
He does every week.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And we should have him back on the podcast sometime.
I would love to.
He's great. That was a great one. So no, but he's also a trainer of champions. You know, he destroyed his body so much that he can't walk properly without a walker now. And he's not that old. He's got to be in his 60s or 70s. But your body to be so worn down, your hips to be so destroyed that you can't even do anything. It's a fighter's lifestyle, but it's not a martial arts lifestyle. See what I'm saying? So martial arts comes from the idea of self-preservation, self-protection. You learn to defend yourself to protect your clan. Prize fighting is competitive sports. Whether it's wrestling or judo or anything like this, is I'm going to push and do what I got to do to get that gold medal. And you become so fixated on that path, which is amazing. You know, like, wrestlers are some of the toughest people I know, where they just day in and day out, they go through that grind. And we talk about that on the Nathan's podcast, you know. But at the same time, you have to understand what you're doing to your body. And there has to be a balance. You have to be smart. And this, let me be honest here. I err on the side of not taking care of my body. I really don't. And my wife is on me all the time. So, you got to cool out. And the physical therapists at our academy, especially as you turn older. And Cain Velasquez is not a spring chicken anymore. You have to understand how to keep your body functional, still pushing it, still keeping it real, but listen to your body, or very often, do your maintenance work. The one thing I also noticed about Cain Velasquez is not just that, but originally his weight training routine was more damaging to his body than anything else. I saw part of the new countdown thing that they had for ESPN for this fight, and he has a different trainer now, and he was doing some things that were more intelligent. But I think the damage is done, that he destroyed his knee in doing weight training that was really, and I'm not a weight training expert, I can look what he was doing and say that was terrible. That was actually harming his body, because a lot of fighters, they want to push, but they're not scientific. And you have to have days on, days off, hard days and weekdays. You have to balance. That doesn't mean you don't come to the gym. I ask my fighters to come to the gym 6 days a week, but we don't go hard every day. Some days, like today, I just came from the academy, and it was an all drilling day. It was a pretty light, very technical drilling day where we're just focusing on technique. And I would say that's a good portion of the class didn't really break that much of a sweat, but it was an intelligent training session where we got a lot done, but the taxing element of your body was much lower. So that's important that we use cycle between that. And whether you're an MMA fighter or just a recreational martial artist, and it doesn't matter what martial art you're doing, taekwondo, karate, if you are not understanding your body, pushing it, but also pulling back and alternating days and being careful, man, that you're not going to last. Which is why in judo, and I love judo, in my heart of hearts, I just love everything about judo, the way it talks about personal betterment and all these things. But most judo guys outside of Japan are not training in their older age. They're just not. They can't. Their body's too destroyed. Their knees are done. There's so many exit of so many judo guys I know who went to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because the judo is so hard on their bodies. Like I still want to grapple, but I just can't. I can't do throws anymore because it's just killing me. Because you destroyed your body so much for so many years, and that's Cain Velasquez right there. And he fought very poorly, but I think the real root of it was his knee. Like you made a joke, and that's hilarious that the knee won the fight. And you're right. You're absolutely right. That's my take on that fight. It was extremely sad and disappointing, to see. And I don't think he should fight again. I really, I don't think he should fight again. Unless he gets some serious doctor clearance, maybe total reconstruction of the knee. But
he's 36 years old, and recovery from this is going to take a whole.
That brings me though it's interesting because there's so many interesting medical developments. I just read this thing where these guys are creating new, they're like cyborg implants for the guy's spine. So they're recreating. So maybe there's something out there for a knee too.
Boy.
Yeah.
Where can you get some of those?
I know, and stem cells and all these things. Who knows what they could do? Maybe they can fix it. But certainly, the way it was yesterday, can't fight like that.
That's because he didn't want to go out that way. Obviously, nobody wants to go out that way. But it seems like he pushed himself so hard to get ready for this fight, and it was probably going to be one of his last fights, if not his last fight.
Oh, you think so? You think that was in his
head?
head?
I do think he probably was going to walk away if he got the win and just go walk away and be on top. But now he's lost in such a weird way that he almost has to come back for his pride, maybe. Because it feels like he pushed himself really hard when he didn't need to because he wanted to just have this be maybe his last hurrah or something. But now it's like,
well, he is a warrior. I mean, that guy is mentally very tough, and that's one of the reasons I really respect him. There's some things that he does technically that I don't agree with, but I have so much respect for this guy. And because he's such a hard worker, he's not a talent guy. He's not. He was not. He's the guy, the first guy in, the last guy to leave in the gym. He's not a talent guy, and he pushed himself to the pinnacle of the sport by hard work alone. And the same thing in wrestling too. But I think guys like that are driven to win, on that road to get that gold, to get that belt.
We didn't make any picks for this fight. Did you have Velasquez winning?
I was emotionally leaning towards I wanted Velasquez to win really badly, but I said which shows up if Velasquez healed and going 100% is there. This is a fight, and he has great takedowns, and obviously Ngannou has trouble with takedown fighters. Although he did dispatch Curtis Blades in the last fight, so Ngannou's he's in there. He's obviously learned from his crushing defeats and come back stronger. So that was a fight. It was a tight to call and a very hard fight to call.
Yeah. How do we fix the heavyweight division? I mean, 30 seconds or less. Call Dana White. How do we fix it?
Okay, this is the thing. One of the reasons that we're not talking about for the heavyweight division being poor is the plethora of MMA shows out there that draw talent. So, what I would say to Dana White is do what he's doing with ONE FC with some of the promotions across the world. Really reach out to the Russians, to other promotions where scout. He has to scout, and he's trying. He tried to scout. He tried to scout a French fighter, but that guy was terrible. I forgot his name, but he was just so bad.
Jacques, I think. Pepe Le Pew.
Well, his technique was
Jerry
so
Lewis.
bad. Jerry Lewis, yeah, Jerry Lewis. Nobody's gonna get that. Nobody.
Come on,
Jerry Lewis.
We have a mature listening base.
I don't know. I actually got a message from a couple people commenting on the podcast and really really saying that they enjoy our podcast. So I'm very happy. So
thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
And
no,
Renee's mom.
My mom does not listen to this. My mom hates.
My mom
Renee.
doesn't listen either.
No, but I would say scouting is the answer,
Okay.
and I think in-house talent development. See, this is K1 kickboxing. You've heard, K1 from Japan, right? Okay, so they had a stable of heavyweight kickboxers, and one of the reasons they had a really nice stable for a while. they went down because of corruption and a lot of other things, but really they had a really good model. Is what they did was this, and with ESPN, I think it's a good model. It's they got a bunch of fighters from the Kyokushin world, from the Muay Thai world, from the Dutch Muay Thai world, blah blah blah, and they had a lot of in-house development, and they paid them to train all the time. They said, look, for this amount of time, all you're going to do is train. And I was involved with one guy getting ready to fight in an Asian promotion, and I know they paid him a $30,000 salary per year, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but with his seminars and his other things, like, he was pulling it like $30,000 is like,
you can live off that.
You can live off that, right? Exactly. So they paid him $30,000 per year in addition to a fight purse. So he had a $30,000 salary plus whatever the fight purse was per fight, $10,000, and he would minimum 2 fights a year. So you're talking, if you got $10,000 for 2 fights, that's $50,000 a year. Hey, that's not a bad living. And you don't also, you don't have to worry if you lose the fight, instead of getting 10, you get 5, and then you can't pay your bills or something like that. A lot of fighters are in that conundrum where they have to have, like Stipe has an extra job. He's a firefighter. I think he does it partially now out of enjoyment, but also it's a stable position. It's good. Gives a guaranteed income. We can have time to train.
Alec Quinta is a realtor.
I don't think he is anymore. I think he stopped.
He's still got his realtor's license. I think he's definitely focusing more on the fighting since
he might have
more.
his license, but he used to actually really go to work all the time. Yeah, right. I don't think he does that.
But anyway, you got to hustle.
You got to hustle, right? Exactly. I mean, your point is taken, right? But and so I don't know that. I don't know. You know Al better than I do, but I don't know
personally.
Yeah, when you were
name drop.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But yeah, the point is,
I would say get 20 guys, give them a salary for 2 years. And all they do 7 days a week is train and make them have their debut. And in 2 years, you'll have 10 more really top guys in the heavyweight division.
How many years?
2 years, give him 2 years.
Okay.
Like guys who give him 2 years. Sorry, I might have said 10. 2 years where all you do is train 6 days a week or whatever. Push them and guys who have already a martial art background. They take them from one style. Like you could take heavyweights from the jiu-jitsu community, from the wrestling community. I would say scout from wrestling community, and then make the next Daniel Cormier.
What if we just got McGregor to eat a lot of food and fight at heavyweight? Or could John Jones be the savior of the heavyweight division?
No,
because he could move up.
He could. I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. I would say, but
do they need me to suit up? Because I'll suit up. I took a month of classes. I'm ready to go. I only made it through 3 weeks of striking, but I'm ready.
You're ready. You're ready to go. Yeah. I had a guy come into our academy recently, and he was like, "Yes, I'm an expert in Israeli survival jiu-jitsu, and I'm a Krav Maga instructor." And he was, he said he wanted to fight in a month, or something. And he was talking about this, and I said, "Okay, well, you have to do jiu-jitsu." He's like, "I'm already an expert in jiu-jitsu." And he came in. I had him fight my white belts, and we never hurt anybody in our academy who comes in. We never do that, but. But he said he was an expert, so I put him against my white belts and some of my more senior white belts, even one blue belt, and it was about an hour. He tapped, it was over 100 times, and we it was not a good look for him. He didn't really know what he was doing. So there's some people who are completely delusional like that they think they can fight, and
but I had 3 weeks of training.
Sometimes it's entertaining. I was entertained though I had to tell him that I feel that you were completely delusional in your fight skills, and he didn't really like that. But
you're supposed to just tell people you're great and then cash the check.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. Yeah, because that's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins.
No, there's a lot of integrity at Radical.
No, you have to. And I said, you really don't know anything. And also, he was teaching, and I said, look, dude, you can't teach because you don't really know anything, whatever. Anyway, so, but, there are a lot of people delusional and to go in MMA. And it's funny, the lower level MMA, you can see this because the promoters, like I said, there's a lot of shows out there now. And, it's interesting because I always see MMA as an experiment in what works. But it's becoming something different now. It's becoming like Tough Mudder. You know what Tough Mudder is? That race where, Tough Mudder, the original idea was the SAS put you through this course, and it was a training modality for the elite special forces of England or whatever, right? But now it's like this thing that people do to say they did it and feel like they have an achievement. And At the low levels MMA, the level skill is extremely weak in some promotions. It's extremely weak. And you're like, wow, those people should not be fighting. And yet the promoters have no qualms about putting them in the ring. It's sort of like a thing people do. And the level at the lower levels, like it's like, I would say it's like a pyramid. And the top, the pinnacle of the pyramid, the people are amazing, like John Jones, Daniel Cormier, T.J. Dillashaw, Henry Cejudo, Cody Garbrandt, obviously that Irish dude who I can't stand. What's his name again?
Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis, Conor McGregor, Khabib, Tyron Woodley. All the peak of the pyramid is extraordinarily skilled. And they are really pushing the envelope with martial arts is. But the base of the pyramid is wide.
That's where I am.
And yes, you are at the base of the pyramid. Yes, and extremely unskilled. And it's sometimes at the lower levels, it's time for regulation because I feel there's some danger there. And for people who are training, and you have aspirations of going into the cage, you have to have a serious evaluation of your skills. Are you diluting yourself or not? You have to really stop and think because people can get hurt all the time, So that's my take on that. I want to pivot to some other fights that happened. The Nagano fight was a real interesting fight.
Did you watch the other fights?
I did. I watched the other fights. The Vic versus Felder was actually a really interesting fight, and that was last night. It was great because let me tell you something. So a lot of people, this is a really interesting fight, and this is the only one I want to talk about. That there's some other good fights I know, but this is really interesting because you have James Vick, who has a very, very strong reach advantage. And in striking, the concept is the longer the reach, the better. And you can see over MMA time that there's an element of fighters having longer reach, having more success, kind of a little bit of lankier body type because of the more emphasis placed on striking understanding and because the rules, the way the stand-ups are. And it's just easier to learn striking somewhat than it is to learn the grappling game, the ground game. So you see a little bit more emphasis on striking. So you saw guys like John Jones, T.J. Dillashaw, who have long arms even for their frame. So they have a tremendous amount of reach, and that you can say that a lot of the guys, Conor McGregor too, he's got long arms, and you see that people are having that success. And Felder, who's an old school boxer, really old school boxing trained, has much shorter reach. So how is he going to overcome this reach disadvantage? And it was really interesting to see how he did it. And you can see he was really skilled. And he ran a clinic on Vic and really took a hard fight. And Vic is no slouch, but he used a lot of angle movement, old school boxing movement, angling, putting, and spinning techniques. So I really, really enjoy that. I'm a fan of spinning techniques when they're done properly for the right time and place. They can be really good. And he used a spinning elbow and a spinning back kick to really overcome the reach, to spin in. As the guy was punching, come back and spin him, elbow him. He elbowed him like 3 times in the face. I was like, wow, that is a really good answer to that question. And it was a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. And the other fight the other night was Kron Gracie making his UFC debut, which was a big deal. The jiu-jitsu community is all like, yay, Kron won. But and Kron looked great in his jiu-jitsu. He took the guy down, he choked him out.
Against Alex, right?
Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy. And again, it's an issue of reach, but Kron managed to get in. He threw some punches too, but and his striking has improved, but he's still very green, and he's got to stay in the lower level of the pool before he reminds me of an early Damian Maia, and he can go to some places. You'd be surprised. That guy, he reminds me of early Damian Maia. The minute it goes to the ground, he's so far and ahead above everybody else that he has a very strong chance of finishing. But if he can't take the guy down, he is gonna eat it. Or Brian Ortega had that with Holloway the other day. If you can't bring it to grappling, they lose in the striking department. That being said, Brian Ortega has obviously improved a lot, and I hope Kron Gracie does too. But he's very herky jerky and a little stiff. Though he was much better than when he was in Japan. So it's nice to see him succeed and do well. It was the exact same. Speaking of Damian Maia, Damian Maia had a great win over a New York fighter, old school New York fighter. He's from the Tiger Schulman camp, which was Lyman Good. And Lyman Good looks like a superhero. I mean, the guy is just enormous, and Damian Maia was dwarfed by him. And I mean, I've been critical of Damian Maia before, but This was a maestro performance. He shot in, took him down, and let me tell you, in this fight, Damian Maia's hips were in. They were glued to the guy.
Oh.
The guy almost got up. He got in on him again, and then took his back. And the Damian Maia fight and the Kron Gracie fight kind of played out the same way. Got on the guy's back,
Yeah.
kind of tipped him over from back take, and then just finished the
You
choke.
must be listening to the show. He's taking your notes.
I was really impressed with him, and he did amazing. And but then again, his striking is weak. You know, it's the thing about jiu-jitsu guys. The issue is with MMA. We always talk about this. We talk about this in other podcasts. Is it generalist, or are you specific? You know, or a more specific fighter that goes to MMA, right? So. Should people start off doing MMA from day one and be kind of a jack of all trades and be a journalist, or should they be, you know, okay, I reach the pinnacle of wrestling, I reach the pinnacle of jiu-jitsu, I reach the pinnacle of this, and then I go to MMA. Well, you know, at this point, the jury's not out on which is better. You can see that if you're significantly better in one element, very often at the low mid levels, you can do quite well. However, you do need to be well rounded. So I don't. Again, that question is not answered yet. But Kron Gracie showed that, hey, I can push my jiu-jitsu on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And Damian Maia did that too to a guy who is much stronger. I mean, it's the thing that martial arts always says: this little guy beating the big guy. And Damian Maia versus Lyman Good was really kind of like David versus Goliath, and that he just got on his back and choked him out like it was nothing. It was pretty damn impressive for both of those fighters. So. You know, that's kind of what's been going on lately. And there was the Sun Tzu Moraes fight, which was very, very interesting, and that was also on the Damian Maia card. And Moraes had a really nice guillotine to finish that fight, and it's nice to see him come back and be a real threat at that division. That whole card was one thing I noticed is that. You had a lot of grapplers who were well-rounded grapplers. Now they start out as a grappler, as a specific fighter, you know, specific discipline, single style discipline, but they managed to get into the MMA world. And Moraes originally is, you know, a jiu-jitsu guy, but he's extremely skilled boxer now, and very well-rounded. So I think whether you're talking about old school Damian Maia or new Kron, that's the path for them, where. Like some of those fighters in that Sun Tzu Moraes card, they're the younger ones up and coming. You saw a lot of grapplers who were well-rounded, great takedowns, great striking. They did start as single discipline, but they made that transition to MMA to being well-rounded very well. And so I think that's should you start out doing everything at once, or you start as a specific style, one style fighter, unit style fighter? I don't know. The jury's out on that one, but at some level, you do have to draw in all those other skills. Yeah. You just become too predictable. So it was nice to see that. So I think the success of who are those fighters? There was Aldo is back. He did really well. Oliveira is a great example of that. You know, Charles Oliveira is the largest number of taps in the UFC, and he's kind of like, this is what you should look like when you're a jiu-jitsu guy coming to MMA. You know, you make sure that in every single discipline, whether it's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, or striking, that you are a threat, and it's that's the path for Kron going forward. You know, and I think for all of us, you know, like. I was just saying, and I sent you some of the questions that we've been sent. You know, how should you approach a street fight? You know, is MMA good for a street fight, or this or that? And you know, I want to segue into that topic a little bit, but you know, the most important thing is to have a variety of skills for a variety of situations. You know. Yeah. Anyway, but speaking of which, yes.
You're skipping ahead, all right?
Skipping ahead, yeah.
Let's jump into some of the listener questions.
Times. Yeah. So, and if you have any questions you'd like to ask me, you know, feel free.
Where do babies come from?
The stork.
Oh, cool. Put out some bird seed.
Yeah, and also for our listeners, if anybody has any questions, feel free to message us on the Martial Culture podcast page on Facebook, and you can send a question to me, and we got a few. And there and a couple other places, personal questions that some students have asked me, email me around the world, because I have some students around the world who ask me advice and things like that.
Yeah.
So they asked me a bunch of questions, and also a couple of ones I picked up that people keep asking on forums and things like that. Asking me on forums.
There's no names associated with these questions.
No,
so I'm going to
no.
make them up.
Yes.
Dave from Cincinnati says, Renee, what makes jiu-jitsu hard? And I love that question. It's very open-ended.
What makes you? That's it. That's a great
why is it
question,
hard?
Dave. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave from Cincinnati. Hang up and listen to the answer.
So, what makes jiu-jitsu hard? And in this case, we're talking specifically Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I believe his question was. There are many styles of jiu-jitsu, and when we're talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, what makes it hard is also what makes it great. One of my old coaches, Machado Brothers, said, when you do the sparring is when you get the magic. There's no way you can bullshit yourself. You either tapped or you didn't. And that is a hard pill to swallow, because you have to eat your loss, go home, think about it, and eat reality every single day, where you don't have to do that with other martial arts that much, because in striking, you're mostly doing pad work or bag work, and you spar and you can have a bad day, but one day a week you're sparring. In jiu-jitsu class, you're sparring at some level, whether it's light or hard, at some level every day, and so when you lose, there's no team behind you. Oh, is over the guard, the point guard over there messed up, that's why we lost the basketball game. No. It's
Michael
you.
Jordan screwing up everything.
And jiu-jitsu is very intimate, simulated murder. So there's a guy, there's a guy on top of you with all his weight, dripping his sweat in your eye, who might not have the best body odor, putting his arm around your neck and constricting your carotid arteries until you pass unconscious. That does not sound easy.
That's not fun.
Yeah. So I would say the question is, first and foremost, it's real.
Yeah.
Second, it is based, we really think about it, it's based on leverage. So the higher levels of jiu-jitsu can be a new vocabulary for people, because you're used to walking on your feet and punching things. If in terms of, like, human beings punch. Like, we don't have to be taught to punch. Baby comes out within 10 seconds they're born, they're making a fist.
Yeah.
No, because
you can't hit them back either.
You
They're
can't,
just
yeah,
babies. There's laws. Don't start a fight you can't finish.
So okay, a second here. So, genetically you're primed to understand punching, but you're not genetically primed to understand a triangle choke or, a Yatsukevich armbar. There's a lot of technical movements that you have to train your body to do. You have to learn the walking, and you have to learn the vocabulary of how to move in jiu-jitsu, how to do this, how to do that. And so my second reason, one, it's real. Two, you have to relearn how to walk again. Like, you don't remember what it's like, Matt, to walk, to learn from crawling to walk. And that was hard when you were 2 years old, but of course you don't remember it. Jiu-jitsu, you're learning how to walk in, because it's a very different vocabulary of body movements that you've probably never done. Unless you come from wrestling or you come from judo. And again, it's those grappling-based movements that are new vocabulary. The third reason I would say is, it's I don't know how to put this. It can be daunting, because, okay, like this. Striking is on your feet. So you don't strike with your head on the floor. Mm-hmm. So it's in one dimension of movement. Where in grappling, not just jiu-jitsu, but any grappling, you're in every single angle, 360 degrees in a sphere. So every movement, so you have to develop this internal gyroscope to understand how to fight in almost any position. So imagine if you were fighting in space with no gravity.
Oh my God.
Yeah, or in the water, right? Jiu-jitsu is kind of like that, where you're like upside down, rolling around like cats. So you have to be able to fight from on your back. You have to be able to fight.
Cats in space.
Yeah, cats in space. Cats in space.
It's pigs in space. Right?
Pigs in space. Yes,
We're dating ourselves again.
We are dating ourselves.
Jerry
The
Lewis and
Muppets.
pigs in space.
But it's those three reasons. One, it's real. It's freaking real. Second is you have to develop this new vocabulary movement. And third, it's fighting in every possible, grappling is fighting in every possible angle of human movement, whether you're staying on your feet, on your knees, on your back, rolling, and constantly adjusting. So I would say the natural follow-up question is, how do you deal with that being hard? Well, you take it step by step. First, you have to control your ego. That's number one. And that's how you say, okay, I lost today. I'm going to analyze that loss, take it, learn from it, not get like all bent out of shape, and I'm going to be a scientist about it, and I'm going to come back and try and do better tomorrow. And you put your ego away, and you just eat your losses and learn from them, like any real high-level sportsman. But that's hard. That is easy. It's not easy to say, but hard to do. Yeah. The second, when you're learning this vocabulary, have your instructor, or if you're training with someone, find a way to understand the different vocabularies of movement, or what kind of movements you need. And I highly suggest movement training. Everybody makes fun of Conor McGregor for hiring a movement coach, but that is a really smart thing to
If people can see that, yeah. he did a little dance when he said movement coach.
Yes. I always do my little dance. But understanding how to move and do a lot of solo work with different movements. If people don't understand if you type in Renee Dreyfus Radical MMA and MMA movement drills, there's a Howcast video where I show all the fundamental movements that you can practice on your own to kind of develop your grappling vocabulary of movement, right? Mm-hmm. And the third one is the 360 movement. Again, it's fighting in 360-degree angles. Chain submissions together that take you in interesting angles. And this is a little bit more advanced, but kind of try to be uncomfortable in not scrambling, but moving around in circular sphere-like motions, right? And that, I would say, like that. Judo and any grappling art will help you like that, but basically transition from standing to ground to a single. The guy on the bottom gets a single, you get taken out. Constantly make transitions in angles, and you'll find yourself much more comfortable in those zones. So that's what makes jiu-jitsu or any grappling hard, but particularly, in jiu-jitsu, as I said, it's simulating murder. So you have to control your ego and not spaz out. The most important thing for any beginner is not to spaz out and tone down the use of your strength. Use movement, understanding of correct the movement vocabulary and transitions, and focus on control and break down the base positions of where you want to be, and that's what I recommend for every jiu-jitsu fighter out there.
All right. That's what makes jiu-jitsu hard.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
In my opinion, what makes jiu-jitsu hard is I don't like having bare feet, so I just don't want to fight on a mat with bare feet.
Well, you could always wear wrestling shoes.
All right. I have no excuse anymore. I got to start taking classes.
I'll see you tomorrow at class.
All right. I'll see. 8 a.m., right? All right. What do we got next? Connie from, I don't know. Kalamazoo. Says, what's the best martial art to learn for street fights?
Okay, yes. And that's one of the ones I was really hoping you pick. Okay, so let's pick in your mind, Matt, imagine a street fight. Imagine a street fight.
I'm thinking about Streets of Rage, that game.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
It's like a brawler game where you side scroll and you punch people.
Okay. So explain to me the situation you're imagining right now.
There's a guy. He's got a jean jacket on, cut off sleeves. He's walking down the street. He's got a bandana, and there's street toughs walking towards him. They kidnap his girlfriend and they run away. And then a whole bunch of other guys come out and they just stand there. There's like 5 guys standing in front of him, and this is Streets of Rage.
This Streets of Rage. Okay, that's actually really interesting. Okay, that was very creative. You think you have a career as a writer.
Nice.
But okay, so you create a scenario.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to create a scenario. Okay, it's a girl walking home, and a guy jumps her from behind and tries to assault her. Or I create another scenario. Guess this. This is not one you're going to think. You're 8 years old, and you go to confession, and the sleazy priest molests you. That's self-defense, and that's no joke. I'm not joking here, but you can create all types of scenarios of self-defense.
That was in the sequel to Streets of Rage.
Priests of...
I'll edit that part out. Priests of Rage.
We're
gonna edit that out.
This is bad.
Go ahead.
But
it's a real life situation.
Exactly, real life. And so when you say self-defense, most guys and most martial art teachers think from a male perspective. Number one, they think from adult male perspective. And what they're thinking of is not necessarily just self-defense. They're thinking ego defense. You're in a bar, a guy cops you, says some shit, motherfucker, you did, and then he takes a swing at you, and then you're in it. And that's definitely one pattern. But actually not so common statistically compared to actual crime statistics, actual crime data. The most common assault pattern by far is male on female violence, sexual and also domestic as well. So that's number one. So if you're, what do we, when we say what's the best martial art for street self-defense, what are we talking about here? I would say the best martial art for a women's sexual assault defense, number one, no question, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No question. There's no question about it. The number one martial art for fighting two guys at once, run. Now, if you can't run, take out a weapon. Take out a freaking weapon. Now, then the next one, what if you're fighting a guy with a weapon? What are you fighting a guy with a weapon who's a knife? One guy with a knife versus unarmed. Now, unarmed, movement, boxing, okay, great to keep it standing and not armed. You got to clinch that knife up right away. You got to stand up Greco-Roman controls, and with an understanding of knife, weapon management. I'd say, specifically a combination of jiu-jitsu and stand-up Greco-Roman controls. Unfortunately, a pioneer in that field. This is something I want to talk about in another podcast. But there's a guy named Carl Tanswell. He unfortunately just took his own life. But he is one of Conor McGregor's related to the Conor McGregor world. It's in SBG Manchester. He was a pioneer, first black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in England, and his knife defense was called STAB, stab. Obviously, why? Mm-hmm. And but it was a fantastic, real world, practical, unarmed versus armed knife defense system, which is based on Jiu-Jitsu and Greco-Roman holds, and great system. So if you're fighting a guy, you want to do that, okay? There's no one system for self-defense. None. Because what's self-defense? How are we defining this? So what is the most important thing for self-defense, generally speaking? Adaptability. First, awareness. First, focus and awareness. Know your surroundings. Don't get ambushed. Boom. Done. Focus, awareness, avoidance. Number one, the self-preservation, getting out of the situation before it happens. But assuming you're in the situation, adaptability, understanding that it could be whatever circumstance. You could be fighting a guy unarmed, and then he pulls a knife. This happened recently. There was a shooting on the 7 train here in New York City. 7 train's a very commonly ridden train that goes from Queens to Manhattan. There's 2 gang members, and they're wrestling. The video is out. I'm not going to post it because it's kind of, I think it sensationalizes it, but it's a very serious. 2 gang members got into a scuffle, and they're wrestling each other. They break off, and one guy pulls out a gun and shoots the guy and kills him, shoots him in the back of the head. So it's funny that they thought they were an unarmed. As I understand it, it started unarmed. But then the gun was introduced, and that can happen. You could think you're in an unarmed scenario, and then suddenly you're fighting a guy with a weapon. So adaptive, or you think you're fighting one guy and you're fighting 2, or whatever, or you never know. So adaptability is really, really important. It comes back to Bruce Lee, where you want to get rid of the definitions of I'm a karate guy, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, I'm a kung fu guy. No, fighting's fighting. So have a game in all ranges of combat and be well-rounded at some level. It's important to be well-rounded. It comes back to what we're saying about MMA. Do we want to be a generalist or a specific stylist first? I don't know, but eventually you want to make that jump to being well-rounded. Absolutely. So, one of the persons who messaged me is a wonderful guy. He said some great things about the podcast, saying that he's doing more striking arts. I believe it's like kind of kickboxing, taekwondo kind of thing. And that's great. And that's, maybe a kickboxing, a great place to start. Muay Thai is a great place to start, whatever, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. But at some level, you have to make a jump to the other side of the pond. If you're a grappler, you have to put in striking. If you're striking, you have to put in some grappling. You have to be adaptable. And wherever the fight goes, whether it's ground, whether it's stand-up clinch, which is extremely common in self-defense, the people think, oh, I'm going to learn boxing, learn how to defend myself. Great. But if you don't understand how to clinch and fight in the clinch, you can't maintain that boxing distance. You'll never punch it. And fights go to clinch extremely fast. Whether it's 1-on-1, 2-on-1, whatever, clinch is huge. So if you don't understand how to do that grappling, stand-up grappling clinch, you're going to go to the ground and get your head stomped in. If you don't understand that grappling clinch, you can't make distance and punch the guy. So at some level, you have to understand all the ranges of stand-up combat, and then eventually also include the ground ranges and the transitional ranges. From ground to standing up, how to do that without getting hit, and that's day one Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is how to stand up, or I should say Gracie Jiu-Jitsu because now sport is different, but in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is how to stand up out of an altercation without getting hit and disengage. Like very, very important skill.
Yeah.
So adaptability is the most important skill for self-defense. And the guys who are MMA, they're still not completely adaptable. Hey, let's take out the knife and train knife self-defense. MMA is a great place to start, but it's not the end game. The end game is, well, I mean, it depends how you define MMA, but I'm talking about like unarmed combat only. I don't define MMA that way. I think mixed martial arts really means mixed martial arts, which means you mix everything. I don't. But when we say MMA, that's how commonly we do it. Yeah. So okay, so that's my answer to that question.
So my answer would be track and field.
Track and field, absolutely. And that is, you're joking, but that is the best answer right there.
Yeah.
Awareness and run. If you can avoid and get out of, don't get into a fight. And also, you know what? The great thing is stay away. The best advice that people give, all the self-defense experts, first of all, stay away from areas where there's drunk people and don't get drunk. Great. That's guy and girl. It has nothing to do with gender. Stay away from drunk places where people get drunk and don't get drunk yourself. Instead of going to the rowdy bar in the corner, go to a nice little wine bar, have a sip of wine, and keep it at that. And it's also good.
Go to church. Nobody.
Yeah. I mean, Anyway, but you can never predict
if you're not
what
in
could
the
happen.
situation,
Right.
then there won't be a situation.
Right. But you can never predict. And there's, unfortunately, in that shooting in the 7 train, one of my students was actually in the car near where that happened. And thank God she was aware enough to duck because the guy shot the gun like 7 times. And the bullets everywhere. So you never know. You could be commuting to work and there could be a shot, particularly here in New York, but anywhere. In L.A., my friend who lives in L.A., and this is not as much now, but it used to be, that road rage incidents that involved
Streets of Rage.
involved violence were very common. And was it on the podcast we talked about Jack Nicholson and his road rage incident?
I don't know.
He picked up. Jack Nicholson got into road rage and he picked up one of his golf clubs and attacked a guy. So you think you're with in Beverly Hills and you're isolated or inoculated from violence.
The movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas, wasn't that L.A.?
That was L.A. Yeah, that was a crazy movie.
That's a great movie.
Unfortunately, that's like the. Anyway, never mind. We'll say it later. But it's the politically used that movie's used for political purposes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
More the right wing end of the spectrum.
We don't have no political affiliation here.
I don't know about that. You can speak for yourself. proud leftist right here, man. We lost half our listening base right now.
We didn't want you anyways.
Yeah, well, when Jilson said, BGJ Heroes is the Fox News of, I think we lost a lot.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, one more question.
All right. Thanks, Connie, for that question.
Yes.
Next question. Hang on. I got to read these real quick. This is from Carol. We got a lot of female listeners today. Carol from Dallas. She wants to know what is something that almost nobody knows about self-defense?
That's a great question. I don't even know how to answer that. Okay, what's somebody that always? Okay, I will say this:
Stump the martial artist.
training matters much less than mindset. Okay, I'm gonna hold on. Let me pull up this quote that one of my friends. Do you know who Barry Eisler is?
No.
He's a friend of mine, and he writes the John Rain books, which I highly recommend. They're very entertaining. And this is his quote because he's actually a great martial artist, and he has a quote which I'm gonna read right now. Just let me get it. Here you go. The 2 most important things to do for self-defense are not to take a martial arts class or get a gun, but to think like the opposition and know where you're most at risk. So I would say mindset is key. Understanding when you can be at risk, when you're vulnerable. Also, mindset is and thinking like, the predator. Where are you vulnerable? Thinking that way, putting yourself in that critical mindset. And the other thing is, you could be the best technician in the world. And the Japanese talk about this, but if you don't have the sense of survival, the need to survive, then the will to survive, none of that matters. And you can see that in MMA. Sometimes guys just quit, that they don't have the fighting heart. And the other thing is this, and comes down to female self-defense, is that many times we live in a society that has kind of put women down and made, especially more traditional societies, not just America, but Oblate. So we kind of grind down people's self-esteem. And it's not just women either, but I think it's a lot more common with them. When you grind people's self-esteem down, sometimes they feel that they are not worth defending themselves. And this is an issue when I've taught women in my self-defense class. It's like you, especially women who are victims of domestic violence, is you have to believe you are worth defending yourself. And this also goes for guys who experience bullying at young ages, is they carry around this lack of self-esteem. So they become, in Japanese, they have like this word, makeinu. It's like a beaten down dog. And then you just don't fight back. And you become, I think people who are like that they're beaten down dog. And this is self-defense in the physical sense, but it can also be a verbal sense, because verbal abuse is just as pernicious as physical abuse in terms of what it does to your mind and what it does to your body, what it does to yourself, your sense of self. Self-defense has to start with understanding that you are worth protecting.
Interesting.
And I don't even want to so I had a great conversation with someone the other day, and it's like let's not call it self-defense. Let's call it self preservation. Let's call it. I forgot what the word he used was, but it was really interesting. It was like let's change the way we talk about it. Not defense. Let's talk about let's make a life worth living. And I would say self-defense starts like this. We have a lot of brainwashing out there. Not even just physical. Let's take on the mental side. There's a community. You're not Matt. You're not good enough unless you use Rogaine. Use Rogaine and add more hair. Or you're not good enough unless you lose like 20 pounds and look like this guy. Or you're a girl. You're not good enough unless you look like this or buy these clothes. And it's our consumer society that puts us down and says you can't be worthwhile unless you do this. And that's part of self-defense, is not buying into that bullshit propaganda. And then if you're in an abusive relationship or abusive space, like your boss, the guy's like, you have to inoculate yourself from that negativity. And self-defense starts with there, where you have a core of very hard self-esteem, is I'm a worthwhile human being. I'm worthy of protecting myself. And that mindset. And then, you know what? I'm going to fight like a fucking tiger if you mess with me.
Yeah.
Whether I know something or not. My mom knows no martial arts whatsoever. But if somebody assaults her, man, 70-something years old, man, they're in world of trouble, because she is an old school, Spanish Harlem killer. She believes in herself, And
so maybe one of the first parts of self-defense is self-worth.
Self-worth, yes, exactly. Self-worth. That's exactly what I mean. You have to see your self-worth, and that you are worth defending. And a lot of people don't believe that about themselves, especially if they've had a history of bullying or, some type of abuse, and that's male or female. You have to see that. So I would say that's two aspects of mindset. One side is what Barry Eidler says: think when you're at risk. Think in the mindset of the predator, and the mindset is that. But the other one is you see yourself as worth protecting, and you have that killer mindset, and you are not going to do this to me. So that's what I'd say with one thing that people don't believe.
I think you're going to get a psychiatrist on retainer at Radical.
No, let me tell you, that you're saying that, but it's absolutely true, is that to step in the cage, you need to have your shit together. You need to make sure that if you're going to be in the zone and you're going to be self-actualized as a martial artist, that means you're self-actualized as a person. Means you did that internal work to overcome those negative self-beliefs, and that's, I think, why martial arts is important. Now, it can get out of hand, like we talked about that cultist episode, when I recommend people. I know a lot of people are talking about that.
That was a great episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode. It can get crazy and go crazy and can become
true believers.
True believers. Yeah, it can be like that world. But at some level, martial arts should be a path of self-improvement, starting with you believe that you are self-worth.
Yeah.
And you believe that you are worth defending. And that's something I think a lot of martial arts instructors, they don't teach. They teach the technique, but maybe not the mindset,
Wow.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, we'll have a lot more questions in the future. We have a lot to choose from.
The last thing I want to do is,
Oh my God.
we have
I'm scared.
You're pretty scared? Uh-oh, don't worry. We have a product review, and this is one product that I really like, and we're talking about women's self-defense, but not just women, but it is it sprays mace or, pepper spray. But, let me tell you that a lot of times people talk about self-defense and they say, oh, I'll just carry a gun. But the problem with that is most guys, when they attack you, ambush you. Most people, when they attack you, they ambush you. You're not ready. You don't have the gun in your hand. And that has been proven quite often that when people look at that the movie American Sniper. You see that movie, American Sniper? So it was about this guy named Chris Kyle, and he was like the number one sniper in the history of the Army or something, or Marine Corps or something. And then he got killed by another guy who was emotionally disturbed, who had a gun. And they went to a range. He was trying to help him, and he was trying to be a good dude. And they went to a range, and the guy picked up a gun and shot him. Now, if they both had guns and they both squared off, Chris Kyle would, shoot a dime off the guy's, forehead. But that's not what happened. And that's how crime happens. Crime happens when you don't expect it, when you're vulnerable, when you're weak. So you don't have time to draw your weapon. So the problem is if you even women have a lot of these self-defense tools. I of course always carry a self-defense tool with me, but this pepper spray or mace spray thing is worn on your wrist, and I recommend it especially for joggers. So if you're jogging, you're focused on your run, especially in Central Park. It used to be all the time the female joggers were accosted. It became in the 70s and 80s when I was younger. You just don't jog in Central Park. Now it's obviously much better, but still, there was a woman in Woodside, which is an area of Queens, who was just unfortunately assaulted. So you're going, and she was, as I understand, going out for a run or something like that. Terrible. Wear this. It's instantly deployable. It goes, because it's on your wrist, it's instantly deployable. It takes one pressure, and man, this is the thing I talked about on podcast. I tested it out. I burnt out my nostrils in my nose. It's so a tiny little bit. Burnt out my nostrils, my nose. This stuff is super powerful, and it's also a very hardy case. And I'm going to post it. I'm going to post a link to this wearable mace sprayer, and I recommend this product if you can get it. You can't get it in New York, unfortunately, because they don't ship it to New York. But what you can do is ship it to some of your friends in Jersey and have them send it over. But it's a great thing to wear on your wrist.
They're not like illegal?
Yeah. Pepper spray and mace are illegal to carry.
And you brought it to the studio?
I know. I did. But I'm a special case because I'm a tactical.
Authorized.
I'm a tactical guy. So
please don't spray that in here. We have shows coming in later. We'd have to close the studio.
We have to
for
make a bet.
days.
And then, no kidding. No, this is no joke. This is actually no joke. It is. I've been pepper sprayed before as part of my self-defense certifications, and they've upped the level on this one a little bit, and I could not function for about 3 hours, and it was a tiny bit.
That's crazy.
And it didn't even hit me in the face.
What's the price point? What's it going to run you?
It was like $10.
Really?
Yeah, it was like something like that. I have to pull it up, but
so there's affordable options out there.
Yeah. I will post it on the page. But this is my review of this wearable pepper spray tool, and it's great. And I recommend everybody can get a chance to get it, especially if you're a runner or you're in any area where you think you might be assaulted in unexpectedly.
You live in this world in 2019.
Yeah,
you should get one. I usually just duct tape razor blades between my fingers.
Liam Neeson style.
Yeah.
Don't
compare me to Liam Neeson, please.
I know, right? It's not, no, but you know the movie where he fights the wolf,
the
like
gray.
that.
I think
the gray. Yeah. Disturbing how we are. Some people we respect show that they are.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's
another one. We promise we will be back again next week. No more extended stays. We say that all the time, but
hold on. What do you think of John Jones and Smith? What's your take? It's your John Jones. It's your boy.
That's no contest. It's John Jones all day.
Yeah, for sure. But what round do you think?
Two, maybe even one. Spinning back fist or spinning elbow or something.
Huh. Oh, you want to bet? I'll say it goes to the third.
When is it? It's not for a while, right?
In a week after, not a week, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to take third?
I'll take third or beyond.
All right. I'll take first or second.
Okay, first or second. Yeah, you'll probably win this one.
And it'll be a knockout.
You probably win this one. Okay, good.
Cool.
Yeah, and I get to spray with
you get to spray. Sure. I've never
been
sprayed.
No.
My wife won't sign off on that.
I would never do that to you. It was so bad. This product is really good. It's a really good product.
All right.
All right.
Renee approved. Stamp. Official.
Stamp of approval.
Go pick it up. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will see you back in 7 days.
Okay.
Peace.